The history of the United States is a tapestry woven from diverse experiences, pivotal events, and transformative moments that have shaped its evolution into a global powerhouse. From its early colonial beginnings to becoming a beacon of democracy and innovation, the United States has navigated through challenges, triumphs, and profound societal changes that continue to resonate today. The story of the United States begins long before its official founding in 1776. Native American civilizations thrived on the land for thousands of years prior to European exploration and colonization. In the late 15th century, Christopher Columbus's voyages marked the beginning of sustained contact between Europeans and the indigenous peoples of the Americas. The subsequent centuries saw the establishment of European colonies, such as Jamestown in 1607 and Plymouth in 1620, laying the groundwork for British dominance in North America. By the mid-18th century, the British colonies had grown both in population and autonomy, but tensions with the British Crown over issues like taxation and representation began to strain relations. The American Revolutionary War, 1775 to 1783, erupted as a culmination of these tensions, with the colonies fighting for independence from British rule. The Declaration of Independence, adopted on July 4, 1776, proclaimed the colony's separation and formation of the United States of America, setting the stage for a new experiment in self-governance. Following the Revolutionary War, the United States faced the monumental task of establishing a stable government. The Articles of Confederation, adopted in 1781, provided a framework for cooperation among the states but proved ineffective in addressing the nation's needs. In 1787, delegates convened in Philadelphia for the Constitutional Convention, where they drafted the United States Constitution. Ratified in 1788, the Constitution created a federal system of government with a separation of powers, checks and balances, and a Bill of Rights to protect individual liberties. The early years of the Republic were marked by debates over the scope of federal power and the nation's economic direction. The Presidency of George Washington, 1789 to 1797, set important precedents for executive authority and national unity. Under the leadership of Alexander Hamilton, the Secretary of the Treasury, the federal government implemented policies to stabilize the economy, establish a national bank, and assume state debts, laying the foundation for economic growth and financial stability. Throughout the 19th century, the United States underwent profound transformations fueled by territorial expansion, industrialization, and social change. The Louisiana Purchase in 1803 doubled the nation's size and facilitated westward expansion, while the invention of the cotton gin by Eli Whitney revolutionized Southern agriculture and increased demand for enslaved labor. Industrialization in the North led to the growth of cities, manufacturing, and transportation networks, transforming the economic landscape and reshaping American society. The issue of slavery became increasingly contentious, leading to political divisions that ultimately culminated in the Civil War, 1861 to 1865. The election of Abraham Lincoln, a Republican opposed to the expansion of slavery, prompted Southern states to secede and form the Confederate States of America. The war between the Union, Northern states, and the Confederacy, Southern states, resulted in over 600,000 deaths and ended with the Union victory and the abolition of slavery through the 13th Amendment in 1865. Reconstruction, the period following the Civil War, aimed to rebuild the South and integrate newly freed African Americans into society. Amendments to the Constitution, namely the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, abolished slavery, granted citizenship and equal protection under the law to all persons born or naturalized in the United States, and prohibited racial discrimination in voting rights. Despite these advancements, Reconstruction was marred by resistance from Southern whites, economic challenges, and the emergence of segregationist policies that curtailed African American civil rights. The expansion of railroads facilitated the movement of goods and people across the country, while the steel industry boomed, providing materials for construction and manufacturing. The Gilded Age, 1870s to 1900s, was characterized by unprecedented economic growth, but also by widespread social inequality and political corruption. Industrialists such as Andrew Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller amassed vast fortunes, while laborers faced harsh working conditions and low wages. The labor movement emerged in response to these inequalities, advocating for workers' rights, improved working conditions, and fair wages. Strikes and labor unrest, such as the Pullman strike of 1894, highlighted tensions between labor and management. Meanwhile, the United States expanded its influence internationally, acquiring overseas territories such as Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines following the Spanish-American War in 1898. The construction of the Panama Canal, completed in 1914, facilitated maritime trade and military mobility between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, enhancing American geopolitical influence. However, the prosperity of the 1920s was unevenly distributed, and the decade ended with the Wall Street crash of 1929, signaling the onset of the Great Depression. The stock market crash triggered widespread bank failures, unemployment, and economic hardship for millions of Americans. President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal programs, implemented during the 1930s, aimed to provide relief, recovery, and reform through initiatives such as the Civilian Conservation Corps, CCC, Works Progress Administration, WPA, and Social Security Act. These programs sought to stimulate economic recovery, create jobs, and provide a safety net for vulnerable populations. World War II, 1939 to 1945, brought the United States into a global conflict against the Axis powers of Germany, Japan, and Italy. The attack on Pearl Harbor by Japan on December 7, 1941, prompted the United States to declare war and mobilize its industrial and military resources. American involvement in the war was marked by significant military engagements, including the D-Day invasion of Normandy in 1944 and the Pacific Island hopping campaign against Japan. The wartime effort transformed the American economy, propelling industrial production and innovation. The United States emerged from World War II as a global superpower, with its military, economic, and cultural influence extending worldwide. The establishment of international institutions such as the United Nations in 1945 reflected America's role in shaping the post-war international order and promoting collective security and cooperation. The post-war period witnessed unprecedented economic growth and prosperity in the United States, known as the Golden Age of Capitalism.